everywhere. And there are Mr. Sam's car. All right. I don't know if I'll dazzle you, Eric, but I'll try. Hope you guys had a good day. It's been fun setting up for this thing. So tonight we're going to do it a little differently than we will some of the others. I'm not going to tie for a couple of reasons. Number one, it just takes so long to tie some of these pike and muskie flies, and also a lot of folks just don't tie the big stuff. So I thought instead of just tying a fly, I'd kind of talk about fly design. So whether you're tying or whether you're buying the flies, you kind of know what to look for. So we'll grab a few flies out of the box, kind of talk you through what we look for when we tie or buy these big pike and muskie flies. And obviously, if you have questions, let me know. As of now, I can read both YouTube and muskie, I guess, but it was really developed for pike was this one. It's made out of rabbit. We're going to talk a little bit more about this fly during the program, but it's articulated. Almost all my flies are articulated. At least if they're not articulated, they at least get that T-bone effect or name. And if it was named after Declan, it probably would be the greatest. But yeah, it's probably one of the best steelhead flies I've ever come up with. Don't talk much about that one. If anyone has a picture on it, they'll be showing pictures of the Prestonia. But here's what we're looking for in fly design when it comes to pike and muskie. We want movement, and we want movement side to side. Pike and muskie are T-bone eaters, and I'll show you a video here in a little bit that'll demonstrate that. And what I mean by T-bone eaters is they like the fly to swim away, and then on the pause, we want that fly to sit sideways. So we want that fly fleeing, and then we want it to kick sideways. Pike and muskie both eat from the side, and I'll show you a video and a picture here in a second once we get the other images going. We got a whole technical thing going tonight. It's going to be, hopefully it works out. I'm not the most technically savvy person in the world, but to set up tonight, I think we've got it where I can show you some videos and I can show you some pictures and kind of demonstrate some of this stuff. So that was the first very favorite colors: gold, orange, and yellow and black together. I probably caught more pike on that fly. You're not casting in atoms. It's not a dry fly. No matter what fly you're casting, it's a pain in the butt casting big pike and musky flies. So I'm not really that concerned about it being heavy. I want that thing to get into the water. I want it getting down into that strike zone quickly, and I want it to swim correctly, which this fly does. That was made out of a lot of rabbit. From there, we kind of moved on. I'm going to stick with the same color scheme. Kind of moved on to this pattern a little bit more than that one, just because it's a little easier to cast, a little more synthetics. What we're looking for when you're buying flies or tying flies for that matter, we want a lot of water movement. We want water to move up and over the head. We want it to dive down over the tail. That gives that tail a lot of motion. So we want it to be stiff up front with a little bit of bulk, and we want that water to glide up over that stiff bulk and down over the tail when it moves. Again, this is an articulated fly in that favorite color scheme of mine, black and orange and gold. So from there, we'll get a little bigger. We'll switch color schemes. Well, we've got a dragon tail. If you've used these, you probably love the way they swim. I do. This one also has a rattle built into the tail. I like a lot of rattles. I like a lot of noise in my pike flies. These tails swim great. They're beautifully, they swim just as good as anything you'll ever see in the water. The negative is one tooth hits those and they're trashed. I don't use them much anymore. When they first came out, I loved them, but here's what we use now. I think it's a better option, and it's this. It's really kind of feels like rawhide. I don't really know what it's made out of. If it's synthetic or if it's really truly leather. I'm not sure. But that tail moves just as well as the dragon tail, but it doesn't fall apart like the dragon tail does. Also, one other advantage: this is a lot easier to cast than the dragon tail. So again, looking at fly design, we've got a rattle, we've got a long tail with some movement. We've got bulk up front that gives us not only a good silhouette, but it also gives us a ramp for the water to shoot over as we strip, dives down over the tail, gives us a lot of movement. So those are the things we're looking for when it comes to fly design. And there are numerous flies that give you all those things. But really, what I'm looking for in a great pike and muskie fly is bulk um, without a lot of weight. Typically, I like synthetics, something that's going to shed the water, so it's not real heavy to cast. But I want bulk, and I want a good silhouette, and I want the bulk to give me water moving over the head, shooting down over the tail. Also, I want that fly to give me that T-bone look. So we want it to swim as we strip it. When we stop, we want it to turn sideways. To me, that's the perfect muskie and pike fly. And I'll show you a video here in a little bit that demonstrates that. Any questions about flies? We're going to get into a lot more nuts and bolts of flies here in a second. We're going to go ahead. I'm going to switch the video over to the television. I should be able to show you some videos. Should be able to show you some pictures that are, kind of demonstrate everything with pike and muskie that we do, type of water we fish. Not going to get into a whole lot of the rods, reels, lines, stuff like that, because the last night of this series is going to be, sorry, somebody's calling. The last night of this series is going to be all about equipment. And so we're going to talk the nuts and bolts of what we use, why we use it. But we'll talk a little bit of specifics tonight. So if you have questions, please ask, because I'm guarantee you people are going to be on here wondering the same thing. Well, Shane, you're missing out, buddy, because I'm telling you, if you would fish for pike with me, you would. I'll be honest, I spend more days myself fishing for pike than I do steelhead. I mean, or anything for that matter. I would literally give up everything that I fish for to fish pike and only pike. I love them. A little bit about my background, though, and maybe why I'm a little partial to pike. My sons are the 5th generation in our family to pike fish on these rivers that we guide for pike. The reason I lived where I lived was because my dad loved the pike fish, and we grew up on the Yellow River, and it's why he bought a place on the Yellow. My great-grandfather was killed pike fishing. True story. A tree fell on him during a heavy storm. They pulled their boat up onto the bank, climbed underneath it, and the top of the tree broke off and hit him. It's our family fish. My parents' first dates were pike fishing. Should have told my mom something then, maybe, but or maybe my dad. I don't know. But it's our family fish. It's what I grew up doing. It's why we why we lived where we lived and why we had boats. I mean, it's a pike family. So that's why I love pike. It's kind of in my blood. Another reason I love pike is, to me, there's nothing. I love angry fish. I love aggressive fish, and to me, there's nothing more aggressive than a pike. Muskie are a close second, but muskie are uh, muskie are very prone to following to the boat, which drives a lot of pike fishermen, including myself, a little crazy. I want a fish that's going to, if it's going to expend its energy to follow, I want it to expend its energy to eat. And although I'll show you a figure 8 video here in a little bit, that is the only pike I've ever seen on these rivers eat on a figure 8. If they're going to move, they're going to eat. So let me go ahead and switch it over here and see what we can get going. Bear with me 1 second. All right. Yeah, Shane, nice try on the 18. Oh, unfortunately, most of my pike fishing is done out of the smaller boats. Even if it wasn't, though, it's 18, but who's going to stand on top of the motor? That's kind of where we'd have to be to Hey, we're gonna be out of this thing soon, right? So we can do this. All right, let me get YouTube moved over, and we'll get going. YouTube, you're going to be backwards because I couldn't figure out how to mirror that. But there aren't very many places where we have text anyway. Can you guys hear me okay? Shoot me a thumbs up, Dave, or a yes. On Facebook, we'll get rolling. All right. So Pike and Muskie. Like I said, Pike are absolutely my brain the other night trying to figure out how I can show you guys some pictures and videos. Let's just hook this up on the television and pictures on the computer, and we should be able to get everything. Don't see why it won't. All right. Most of my pike and muskie fishing is done from April to December. And it's kind of in conjunction with our steelhead runs sometimes. Our pike fishing, and I'll explain these in a second. We're using a 7.5 foot main 10 weight, reel to match, sink tip or floating line, depending on where we're at in the water column, whether we're using poppers or subsurface, and then a steel leader. That steel leader should be titanium single strand from Scientific Ink. It's the best leader material I've ever used, and I've been pike fishing since so over 40 years I've been pike fishing until about 4 years ago to find the perfect leader, and I think I finally found it. My plan was to build that tonight, but it just didn't look good on the video. You didn't see anything I was doing. I think I'll probably put together just a video on building that leader and put it on YouTube though, so everybody can see it, because it is, like I said, I spent 40 years trying to find a leader, and I think I finally found it about 4 years ago. So we're 7.5 foot 9/10 weights. If you're just pike fishing, you could probably go with an 8/9. If you're just muskie fishing, I would probably go with the 10/11. But we didn't really want to buy 7.5s. Two reasons. The short sticks from Loomis, which have been discontinued. Hopefully they're going to be bringing something back like that. So sticks from Loomis, 7.5 foot 9/10s. The reason we use those is on the hook set. No matter how the strip set, it just doesn't happen. Most people aren't. So that 7.5 foot rod moves that fly a lot quicker. Another nice thing about those rods is they're light. 8 to 10 hours of pike fishing or muskie fishing, you get worn out no matter what rod you have. Hey, Dan, you're not having video issues? I haven't switched the slide yet. That's just something you always hear when you talk about trout fishing or smallmouth fishing or warm water fishing. And what that typically tells somebody is that that you can throw the line in your back pocket and you can go ahead and fish. Here's the issue with that. Yeah, it's probably true. You once, muskie a handful of times, but in muskie we can just chase after them. The issue is this: if you have a junky drag system because you wanted to save some money, you a lot of times you're going to end up losing those because of a clunky drag. The drags that we use, the reels that we use for, it's all the same great drag system. So you spend extra money to get a better drag. Most reel companies, you've got to spend extra to get a better drag. Lamps, and you don't. So from the very bottom end, which is about 100. All right, rivers that we're guiding other than the St. Joe, because I do the St. Joe quite a bit for pike as well, especially late spring, early. A couple small rivers, the Yellow and the Tippy. Woods, that's about all they flow through, maybe some farm fields, but you never see another soul. They're gorgeous rivers. They're spring. They don't get hot. In the middle of summer, 85 degrees in the middle of summer. It's always above 80 at some point in the middle of summer, and I've seen it as high as 85. These smaller rivers, which are, they stay a lot colder. Pike are a fish. They do not like the heat of the summer. So in the middle of the summer, I'm not fishing the Joe for pike. Fishing the Joe for a lot of smallmouth, but I'm not fishing it for pike. All right, I told you about that video. I'll show you here in a second. So these are all bait fish, and this is why we have a lot of pike in our rivers. We got a lot of bait fish, a lot of suckers, a lot of carp, a lot of chubs, a lot of shiners. Oh, that's why we have a lot of pike. When it comes to fly design, don't hesitate to throw something big. Most of my pike flies are in that 6 to 8 inch range. Most of my musky flies are in that. I don't go much bigger than 12. Feel like you really need to, and it just becomes very hard for most of my clients to throw it. Let's talk a couple things, a couple seconds about flies. Talk about design earlier. So I grew up on the Yellow River, just outside of Plymouth. I grew up pike fishing on the Yellow, and we tackle when we were kids, and we caught a lot of pike with a nice pike. But until I started fly fishing, I had no idea the size of the pike and the number of the pike that were in that river. We see at least it's all about fly design. If you're throwing a Rapala and you stop reeling that Rapala, it's going to float to the top or it's going to suspend. But whatever it does, it looks like a piece of or floating under the river. It's not. It doesn't have any motion. And what we're able to do with motion without movement. So what I mean by that is we strip that fly. It obviously has motion and movement at that point. We stop stripping that fly. And when we stop stripping that fly, all of these legs, flash, the rabbit string, all of that undulating under the water. We have motion, even though that fly isn't moving. That's huge. That is absolutely huge. Whether that pike is in a super aggressive mood or musky, I keep saying pike. So I don't have an entire musky program. I have an entire pike program. So I'm used to doing programs on pike. So this is going to be very pike. It's all relative, and it goes both similar. So what we're looking for is that motion of the fly without actually having to move the fly. We're also, like I said, looking for that fly on the pause. We're looking for it to kick sideways, sideways profile. Again, we see twice as many pike on flies than I ever did on conventional tackle. It's not even close. What we're looking for when we're pike fishing? Depth. For water, it's between 8 feet deep, typically on these small rivers. As well, they're not going to typically be out there. They're going to be back. Okay, so what we're looking for is depth without logs that they can hide behind or hide underneath. I mean, that. This right here is pike heaven. 3 holes right here. I mean, it's just loaded. Kevin. So we want dead water, and we want, if we can get it, we want structure. But I'll give you that. All right. So what we have here, if you look, we've got a log right here. Every time that river floods, it dumps over that log and digs this hole out. This hole is about 8 feet deep. But we've caught here, we've caught them up here, all the way prime lie on the Yellow. Well, this is Shane from Kentucky. All along, he'd been saying, I've been telling him I want you to get a giant, and this is a pretty good fish. Look how narrow this river is when it shoots over up to his right shoulder. There you go. Look how narrow and small this river is at this point, and watch how big this pike was. Well, pike are very territorial, and what I mean by that is unless we have a high water event, we typically catch those fish in the same hole over and over and over. They don't move a whole lot. And I'll show you a couple pictures here in a little while that'll show you what's good for one pike is good for another. I mean, they really, the same holes. If you find a hole that holds a pike year after year after year, week after week after week, that hole's probably going to hold a pike. So again, keep in mind how small that river was, and then look how giant this pike is. You don't have to go to Canada to catch big pike. That was a beauty. Only figure 8 fish I've ever seen eat a fly. Day off. That fish had followed 5 times to the boat. Pike typically don't do that. Pike, when they come up, they eat. They typically don't. They don't just follow. If they're going to expect the question a lot, like what's it? What are you looking for, weather-wise, water-wise? water, water temperature wise, clarity compared to subsurface. And here's the answer: there isn't any rhyme or reason that I've ever found for pike, especially to throw poppers. If I want to most, if I want to key in on that most explosive eat, I'd throw a popper. If I want to put a bunch of fish in the boat, I'm probably going to throw something subsurface. But to me, I've caught thousands and thousands of pike in my life. I love throwing poppers. It's a little more challenging. You're not going to get 20 eats in a day like you might subsurface. But I always say the same out of the sky onto your fly. It's awesome. Tyler, I came in late. Are you using 8 or 9 weight for these fish? I'm using 9-10s, buddy. 7.5 foot 9-10s. Look at that eat. Things like, literally like God dropped a bowling ball on your fly. So our pike on average is about 30 inches. We'll get bigger ones. They'll grow, but our average pike is about 30 inches. They get a little bigger from there. Pike don't always necessarily need giant flies. This fish right here was 39, and it ate a leaper lizard, smallmouth night, because that's a hot fly everybody always asks about. A 2-inch crayfish pattern that we were smallmouth fishing with. All right. This fish was our largest fish 2 years ago. This fish was our largest fish last year. They are different fish, but take a look at the rocks on the bank. They were in the exact same 2 feet of water. Literally the exact same 2 feet of water. There's a little creek right here. You can see it coming down. It's not even a creek, it's a trickle. And it keeps this water about 10 degrees colder than the rest of the river in the middle of the summer. And although both of these were in September, they were after the water has cooled down. The pike found its home right here, right where that little creek comes. All right, some of the musky fishing we do. We fish Webster, Barbie, chain, and upper long. About minutes from South Bend. I drive like a grandpa, so they're probably maybe, but for you guys, maybe an hour. Barbie chain. So Webster Lake is primarily that's our primary lake. Average, or it's managed, I should say, for about 6 adults. A lot of muskie in Webster. If it's because it's a series of lakes that we can kind of from the wind a little bit. Webster's a little more out in the open, not as much. Barbie's got a lot of shoreline that we can get in and hide on the. And then Upper Long is a really small lake. Or Barbie, and we're not doing any good. Sometimes we'll spend the afternoon. Kind of a cool lake. You don't need a day to fish the whole lake 2 or 3 times. Muskie, that's an average muskie for Webster. Muskie for any of these lakes. Here's the thing with muskie and my love for pike over muskie. I like rivers. I'm a river rat. Fish, and if we had them more in rivers around here, I'd probably be saying that. We go at times of the year where there aren't ski boats. We typically don't fish after. We're not normally there again until September. So we kind of miss the ski and water ski crowd, which is lakes, and a lot of people don't like about lakes. So, but I do love. The other thing I like about pike over expend the energy to come after a fly, they're going to eat it. It's in muskie, muskie follows and follows and follow, and they just don't eat. Now, to muskie over pike is the size. I mean, to see a 15-year fly, we had one this past spring that was followed the fly for a walk around the boat, and it would hide under the boat for a little while, then into the boat. It was one of those that you kind of knew wasn't going to eat. It just eat mentality. It was a slow follow. It was a meander. To have a 50-inch fish follow that foot and a half under the surface, 3 feet under the surface, depending on where we were at. It was pretty cool. But I prefer pike just because I love our river pike. I'm going to go ahead and switch it back just so I can sit down and chat. You know, we do that. We switch the. There we go. Thank you, Mark. We can't wait to have these videos will be fun this week and next week, but it's not. Look, you know, like I said, critters are my favorite. I mean, they just are. Hold on, I forgot. There we go. I keep forgetting we're on YouTube as well on the big computer. All right. So toothy critters are my favorite. They just are. I love them. It's, like I said, it's what I grew up doing. It is my addiction. If I could just guide pike and muskie, I probably would. I'd probably miss my fall steelhead and I'd miss my smallmouth, but I absolutely just love pike and muskie. They're just, to me, that take, it's a hunt. I was talking with Adam Martin today about it, and it really is. It's a hunt. It's like rabbit hunting or bird hunting. You're going along and there's not much happening, and then all of a sudden, whammo. And to me, that's why I love rabbit hunting and I love bird hunting. I mean, it was just all of a sudden there was that adrenaline rush, and it happened, and it was on. I can't wait to take Ryan Court. It's gonna be awesome. He's gonna freak out. I know how excited he was steelhead fishing on the Joe, and I can't wait to see him get one of those pike to eat, man. That's going to be awesome. Dave, you and me, buddy, and Shane, we've got to get Shane into a pike. He'll be addicted like us. Dave Huff, if you're looking for rods or great flies, he's a great guy. Look him up on Facebook. He's got great rods, and he ties some just killer pike and muskie flies. He tied some musky flies for us this winter that are just beautiful. So, any questions so far that I can answer about pike, muskie? Like I said, what we're going to do over the next week and a half, I guess it is, next 2 nights this week, then 4 nights next week, we're just going to go over a different species every night. Now, the rest of the nights I will tie. It was just kind of tough tonight to do a pike fly or a muskie fly. They take a while to tie, and I didn't want to sit for 15 minutes and tie a fly that a lot of folks don't care to tie. So the rest of the week, they'll all be tying a fly every night, and they'll be quick. They'll be quick and easy, and everybody can tie them. Yeah, Shane, you do need another addiction. Pike will be it, buddy. I'm telling you. Anybody have any questions? Pike, muskie stuff? I hope you guys enjoyed tonight. I hope you enjoy this week. It should be fun. Like I said, we'll the rest of the week I'll be tying a little bit. Looking forward. I've had a number of emails today that people are really looking forward to the long-nosed gar, presentation and tying, and that'll be cool because that's one that a lot of people don't fish. It's one that kind of became my son Nicholas's addiction for quite a while. He was addicted to gar. They're a cool fish. You talk about a fun fish. Sight fishing for high 40-inch, low 50-inch fish is that's pretty cool. Jake, streamer retrieve for pike and muskie. All right. So and it's kind of like, and I didn't talk about this yet, and that's fly color. It's kind of like fly color. You gotta have to figure out what they're on for the day. Typically what I start with is a long arm length strip and a slow pause. So it's kind of the cadence is kind of strip, pause, strip, pause. What that does, that moves that fly about 2.5 feet, and then on that pause, it allows that fly to kick sideways. That's what I start with. Typically, that's what my pike are eating, and our muskie too. But From there, I'll go to real fast and real short. So more of a strip, 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 strip. Keep that fly moving quickly. And all these flies are designed to do a great T-bone on the pause. On the strip, they're designed to dart back and forth real nicely. So they're designed to swim a couple different ways. If they're not eating that, then we'll go real slow and low. So we'll get down a little deeper with more of a longer strip and then a longer pause and get that fly down a little deeper. So those are kind of three ways that I present the fly. If they're not eating one of those three ways, we're probably in trouble for the day. Typically, though, that very first one is what we have to use for the day, and that's all we have to use for the day. What rivers? What are your pike rivers again? So, Stan, early spring, late spring, I should say, late spring and early fall, we could be on the Joe. Other than that, we're typically on the yellow or the tippy. Let me back up. Somebody had asked something just up there. Yeah. All right. I'll get you that, Dave. No, we don't catch any pickerel, Randall. It's off your topic, but I'm moving to Oklahoma next. The lake next to my house, population of walleye, largemouth, and smallmouth. What type of rod would I recommend? Well, largemouth and smallmouth are kind of two different rods, Tyler. Because typically with largemouth, I'd recommend an 8. Typically with smallmouth, I'd recommend a 5, maybe a 6. So I suppose if you've got a 7, you could probably do, all three of those. Okay, might be a little heavy for smallies, but it'll work. That was one of my first heavy rods, was 7, 9'7", and I threw a lot of big bass bugs for largemouth, and I threw a lot of smallmouth flies too. So I suppose I'd go with the 7. Dave, as far as getting those followers triggered, so here's my suggestion when you're pike, when you're muskie fishing, because pike, I don't worry about figure eighting. Number one, the figure 8 does not start when you see the fish following. You are getting prepared for the figure 8 well before you ever see the fish follow. So what I try to tell my folks is once I can see the fly, which is typically a third of the way back to the boat, I want that rod already halfway in the water. So I don't want the fly rod up off of the water. I don't want it a foot off the water. I want it halfway down into the water once we can see the fly. That does one thing. First of all, it keeps the fly at the proper depth. I don't want that fly coming up at the boat yet. I want it down low. So that's one thing it does. Number 2, that movement. If we have a lot of movement around and you see the fish following and now you're reaching down to get the rod under the water to do your figure 8, that movement, it freaks those fish out because they haven't seen that sideways profile only to concentrate on that fly. So that's number 1. The figure 8 does not start at the boat. The setup of a figure 8 starts before or right when you can start seeing that fly. So maybe you're 30 feet still off of the boat and you've got the rod already halfway into the water in preparation for the figure 8. As far as how to get the fish turned on and to fire those slow moving fish, I'll be honest, 9 times out of 10, I feel like on our lakes, I can tell if a fish is going to eat by how it follows. And if it's one of those meandering, slow follows, I don't have those fish eat very often, to be honest with you. The way I can convert a follower to an eater, though, is a couple things. I want that fly to have quick movements out of the figure 8. So I want it to slow down a little bit when we're coming around, and I want a quick movement out of that figure 8. So that, again, what we're trying to replicate is a bait fish that's running away from a muskie. And a bait fish isn't going to slow down and say, eat me. It's running. So we want that thing to look a little injured coming into that figure 8. We're showing them that T-bone, that sideways profile, and we want it sprinting out of that figure 8. I also like long movements. I want that thing to swim all over the place. I want to show that fish a lot of side profiles, and I want to show it a lot of fleeing. So quick, long figure 8s, quick out of the turn, long figure 8s is what I like, Dave. But I think the number one thing a lot of people make the mistake on muskie fishing is they don't prepare for the figure 8 until they see the follow. And I feel like a lot of times at that point, you're too late. You're already bringing that fly up too close to the surface. That fish is looking at the boat a lot higher up in the water column. And I want that fly to stay down low. One other thing about pike fishing, or muskie fishing for that matter, Jake and I always call it hitting the pause button. A lot of folks, when they see the follow, they stop moving the fly. And you've got to think like a predator. And a predator is, if the prey stops moving when the fish is following, that pike or muskie knows something's a little goofy. No bait fish, no sucker is going to stop and say, hey, go ahead and eat me. They are moving quicker. So don't hit the pause button. When you see that follow, keep that fly moving until they eat. Don't stop. Hopefully that answers your question. Mark, Dave Huff. Um, He's from Northern Kentucky, and Dave's a great fly tire. What Loomis rod now that your fave has been retired? Shane, I bought a bunch of them. I don't, when they said they were going to retire those rods, the short sticks he's referring to, I bought a bunch of them. So I haven't replaced my favorite yet. It's still the short stick. You know, it's funny with that rod. We bought a bunch of them in expectation that we would break them because, you know, be honest with you, we're throwing giant flies. We're throwing them into trees. We're throwing them around trees if we're on the small rivers. We're throwing to big fish that we want to set the hook like we're trying to break the rod. And so I bought a bunch in expectations that we'd break them, but we have never broken a short stick. Shane, isn't that unbelievable? Stick is my favorite. The figure eight, Dan, great question. So the figure eight, basically what happens is we've run out of room. We've stripped the fly basically to the rod tip, not quite that close unless you want to break a rod. But we've stripped that fly. We've kind of run out of room to move the fly. So at that point, what we do, let's pretend this is the rod tip. We're just adding motion to the fly by moving the rod in a figure eight. You can move it in a circle. You can do all sorts of things, small ovals, eights, but it's moving that fly because you've run out of line to strip. And you've got, look, it's hard sometimes, especially with muskie, to get a muskie to follow, to see a fish. Now, luckily, Webster, we see a lot of fish. You hear about muskie being the fish of 1,000 casts. On Webster, it's not the fish of 1,000 casts. We see a lot of muskie. It's a very productive lake. But still, we want to convert every opportunity we have. So once we've run out of that movement, room to move the fly by stripping, we've got to add movement with the rod. So that's what the figure eight is. Dave says figure eight 3 times or more every time, or you get kicked off my boat. I like it. And Shane, here's a funny one with you do that with waders too. I think you're probably talking about the figure eight, maybe if we're wading. I remember one time back in the early days with float tubes, and I'd take a float tube down the Yellow, and I will never forget. I had no waders on. It was summer, pair of shorts, giant fly with 2 hooks hanging out of it, and the pike ate right beside the float tube and dove right under my legs. And all I could think about was that size 4/0 hook getting stuck in my leg while the pike is shaking its head. And that might have been about the last time I float tubed for pike. that was an eerie feeling. Yeah, Jake, I agree. Another advantage that 7.5 rod is figure eight ability. It's not as clunky, and we can get, again. It's 7.5, so about that hook set too. And when the fish eats with a 9-foot rod stuck in the water with a big bend in it and a lot of limber tip hanging there, it just doesn't get buried. When a fish eats with that 7.5-foot rod, we can bury that fly. I love those short sticks. I wish they hadn't stopped making them. I love them. And I don't know. I haven't looked on eBay or anywhere if they're easy to find used or not. But if they are easy to find, they're awesome rods, and they're cannons to cast. The biggest disadvantage with those rods when we first got them was trying to figure out what line to put on them because they didn't cast very well with just a typical weight forward line. Once we found the right line, which was the Scientific Angler Magnum sonar, then they started casting. The Anadros cast real well on them as well, but at that time they weren't building the Anadros in a 10 weight, if I remember correctly, which is why we went with the other. Oh, Sean says you're not a Harley until you had a pike hook in your body. Yeah, those I don't. I'll be honest. I don't know if I've ever had a pike hook in me, but I've been bitten quite a few times, and man, are they bad. I had one bite me on the thigh one time, 39 incher on the Joe. I was actually steelhead fishing and caught a 39 incher, and man, oh man, did that thing slice me open. Yeah, they're a nasty fish, that's for sure. So even my cousin's showing you, pike is it's our family fish. It's in our blood, that's for sure. Although it looks like you have a bass in your profile picture, I'm a little disappointed. I'm gonna have to call your dad. Any other questions on pike or muskie stuff? I don't know if you missed the beginning. I would literally give up everything that we guide to guide pike. I would miss a few things, but man, to me, pike absolutely my favorite thing. I love them. Yeah, Nick, you've got to come up with Bobo and do some pike on the fly. Wear your hard hat though. I'll put you at the opposite end of the boat of Bob though. We'll get you away from it. You're welcome, buddy. Getting you excited. Yeah, I hear you, Sean. Pike fishing is a lot of work. It is. It's not. That's the one nice thing when we find them on the Joe in the late spring, early summer. I can go out in my jet boat with a trolling motor and I can fish. It's a little easier. But pike on the smaller rivers, it's a lot of work. It wears me out after a couple trips in a row. It's a lot of work, but man, is it fun. Which is another reason, like I said, we use those 7.5 foot rods. They're just not as heavy. And when you're out there for 10 hours throwing 12-inch flies for muskie, I'll take every advantage I can because that's what happens with muskie especially. I'll never forget a trip 2 years ago in the fall. We were over and we'd seen some fish. We'd missed a couple. Had a bunch of follows, but didn't put one in the boat yet. And the fella, I mean, it wears you out. It just does. I don't care what kind of shape you're in. It wears you out. Um, Yeah, I'll answer that in a second, Joe and Wendell. But it wears you out. Pike and muskie wear you out. And the guy's like, all right, I got three more casts in me. Made his first, nothing. Second, nothing. Third one. Third cast, he stopped the fly, probably about 30 feet from the boat. And he like dropped the rod and he collapsed. Like he just collapsed. Sat down in the boat. He's like, I'm done. That was it. And I stand up and I look, and he's got about a 45-inch muskie sitting right behind his fly. I mean, literally, I looked at him. I said, look, you've got one right behind you. Move that rod. And he got up, and as he lifted, because he got up, he lifted the rod tip, and the fly accelerated, and the fish took a swipe at it, but there was slack there, and we didn't get him. And that was probably our best opportunity of the day. Again, we had some other eats and some other follows, but that fish was hot. And that's what pike and muskie is, man. It's a battle. And it's a battle sometimes mentally and physically just to keep going. Because at the end, you never know what might happen. And on that fish, if we'd have moved that fly another 30 feet, that fish was hot on it. We'd have got it. And it is a battle. It really is. It wears you out. As far as pike on most rivers, Joe, there's definitely a southern border, and we're close to it. You get much south of us by maybe an hour and a half, and there aren't too many pike after that. It just gets too hot. Um, so as far as north of us and including us, yeah, most rivers have pike in them. When we haven't tried the Joe yet, does that mean for pike or for anything? And whether that's pike or anything, yeah, go give it a try, man. It's an awesome river. It's a gem. We're really lucky to have the St. Joe. I live about a mile from the river, 2 miles maybe. It's so cool. No matter what time of the year, I can go down and catch fish, throw the boat in, and whether it's smallies or pike or steelhead or salmon, no matter what time of the year, I can go catch fish. Joe's an awesome fishery, that's for sure. Hey, Bill, how are you? What's up, Calvin? Calvin, I was listening to your buddy Bonnie Vare today. I think my wife's getting tired of it. Dave, low light polarized lenses are super. Oh man, absolutely. I think they're super important no matter what we're fishing for. But here's the reality with muskie. If you don't have some sort of positive reinforcement, it is easy to get worn down mentally and physically. And by positive reinforcement, I don't just mean putting a fish in the boat. By positive reinforcement, it could mean a follow, it could mean an eat. It's some sort of idea that, my God, I did something correct. I at least partially fooled that fish. Or thank God there's some fish in this lake. I was starting to wonder. And without polarized lenses, it's impossible to see through that glare. It really is. And I've worn Costas. I see Joe said Costas. I've worn Costas since day one, so 21 years of guiding. That's all I've worn. I think that's all Jake's worn too. Jake, is that right? Um, they're awesome. I mean, in 21 years, I think I've had only 3 pairs. So that means I've had 2 break in 21 years, and their warranty is phenomenal. So I recommend Costas big time. But Dave, you're right. I didn't mention that. Glasses, number one, it's a must for safety. But number 2, just to have that positive reinforcement that I fooled a fish, that's awesome. Let me look a couple over here on YouTube. Dave asked, where do we meet if we are taking a trip on the Yellow? Typically, we meet at my dad's place, just outside of Plymouth. Yeah, we don't normally meet in South Bend. We just normally meet down there, down near the Yellow. So, what are the significant differences you see between muskie and pike on the fly, size, type? Are you strip setting pike? Yeah, so no problem. So difference in size of muskie and pike flies. In the spring, not much. I throw pretty small flies in the spring for muskie and pike as well. By the fall, that's probably where the big difference comes in. Most of my pike flies top out at about 8 inches. This is probably the biggest pike fly I use, and it's right at 8 inches. Maybe I could squeeze 9 out of it, but that's probably the longest pike fly that I use. So it's 8 to 9 inches. With muskie, I will throw some foot-long flies in the fall when those bait fish are real big. So that's kind of the difference. One thing I was talking about earlier, and I kind of skipped over, and that's fly color. And to me, it's kind of the same with fall steelhead swinging streamers. Yes, I have my favorites. I have my favorite colors. This definitely is one of my favorite color combinations. Black and orange and gold, no question. But I'll be honest, for the most part, I feel like that's kind of the way I look at pike flies and muskie flies, and definitely fall steelhead swingers. Fall steelhead swingers, I do not really care what fly I have on. Either they're a player or they're not. I think it's a little more important with pike and muskie, but not. I don't think the fly makes the day. I just don't. Strip set, yeah, I love people to strip set, but it's very hard to get most folks to. So when we lift, there's not that extra 1.5 feet of limber tip out there. When we lift, that fly is getting moved. So here's the thing with pike and muskie that a lot of people don't understand. Maybe when they eat, they have the closing power of a crocodile. They munch that fly. And what we're trying to do is rip that grip so the fly will slide through and get stuck in their mouth. We literally have to rip the fly out of their grip to get that fly hooked in their mouth. So that's why we're having to set the hook so hard. I tell people, break the rod. I mean, literally, try to break the rod. I've never seen anybody ever in my life set the hook too hard. I've never seen it happen. I've seen a lot of people set the hook too softly, but I've never seen anybody set the hook too hard. Hammer them, put the hurt on them. The other thing I didn't mention is leaders. So I mentioned steel leaders and the titanium leaders that we use, and I'm going to do that video because I want everybody to see that. It's like I said, I've been doing this stuff for 40 years with pike, and this is the best leader I've ever come up with, and I've tried them all. But here's the mono section. So for pike, what I'm doing on the mono section, I've got, if I'm going from a sink tip to a steel leader, I just pull a straight section of 16-pound tippet off. Be honest with you, it's 16-pound trilene. That's what I use. Oh, no, thanks. But I pull a 3-foot section of 16-pound trilene off. and that's what I use. Look, the flies are heavy. The casts are either short with a lot of power or long with a lot of power. They don't need any help turning over with a butt section of a leader. I want that fly to get down into that water column, and a heavy butt section of mono holds that fly up. I want that fly cutting through. So I go straight to a 16-pound tippet, 3 feet long on my sink tip line, loop to loop. I tie on my titanium leader with a clinch knot. I put a snap on my titanium leaders. That goes to the fly. If we're popper fishing, I'm using 16-pound again. Now there we do throw we're throwing a floating line, and we do throw a tapered leader. And I typically like that thing to be about 6 feet long. I don't want to play around. I want that thing turning over. I'm not looking for a delicate presentation. I want that thing to smack the water. I want to get it moving. So that's kind of our leader system for pike. I skipped over that earlier. Yeah, Costa, Costa, Randall. Costa del Mar is what it is. But if you type in Costa, I'm sure it'll come up. But Costa del Mar, and like I said, that's what I've worn for 21 years. The glass lenses, like Jake said, the ones I use, and I think the one Jake's using too. I use the amber green mirror, and they're awesome. That's what I think I've had the amber green mirror for at least 15 years, maybe even longer. I love that lens. And it's a good all-around lens. It's like Dave was saying, it's a low light lens. I can see real well on the Joe with it. If we're fishing spring steelhead, I can see everything. I can see follows and eats with pike and muskie, and yeah, it's the way to go. One other thing I didn't talk about with muskie, kind of things pop in my head. Muskie's one of the few times I really, really love to have my sonar unit, my GPS, in my boat. And one thing I do a lot with muskie, not just looking, at arcs and looking for bait fish and things like that, but if I have a fish follow or we miss a fish, I'll pinpoint that fish, I'll pin it, excuse me, and I'll come back to that fish later on. And I might come back to that fish 2 more times that day, 3 more times if I've seen it follow a couple more times. But that is a great tool that we have in my boat for muskie, is that I can pin those fish and I can come back right after them. Because like pike, they're territorial. They don't move around a whole lot in a day when they're looking. Yeah, light amber that I now use. Yeah, the amber lens is that's the best in my opinion. Like I said, I use the amber with the green mirror on it. I love them. Absolutely love them. Boats that we're using for pike are a little different on the smaller rivers. We're normally either in my drift boat or a Smith fly raft. That's typically what we're using as a Smith fly nowadays. They're small rivers. No boat launches, no public access for the most part. And putting in on private land and taking out at my dad's on private land or a couple buddies. They're awesome. The Smith fly boat is an awesome boat. Love it. Ethan makes a great boat out of Dayton, Ohio. Makes a really nice boat. He makes some great, really cool waders and vests and jackets. He's got a whole system over there. It's really nice at Smith fly. Any other questions? Pike muskie stuff? How are you, Rob? I didn't see you on there, buddy. Traverse City. I hope things are going well up there, man. Hope everybody's doing well tonight. It's seems like we're starting to reach that peak, and with the virus and it's scary times. It's nice to be able to talk with you folks and think about fishing instead of thinking about that kind of stuff all day long and watching news and dealing with kids that are home that don't understand why they're home and they miss their buddies. It's funny when it was announced that our kids were off of school, at least for a while. They came home and Lucas, the 9-year-old, was just in tears. He was going to miss his friends, and he just didn't understand why he couldn't see his friends. So my wife installed Facebook on their phones. That's kids' Facebook. It's not like they don't have pages and stuff, but they can go on. They can talk to their friends. And I'll tell you what, the difference in those kids from the time that they came home thinking they were not going to see their friends for a month. Now it's more like 6 months, but and the time that we installed those apps where they could talk to their buddies through the day, night and day difference. I mean, they just enjoy it so much. It's kind of like us getting to talk with all you about fishing and getting to reconnect. And it's a weird way to do it. We love to be on the river together, but man, this is awesome. All right, thank you so much for stopping in tomorrow night. To be honest with you, I don't know what's on the schedule. Might be steelhead or smallmouth. I don't remember. It's on the Facebook page, and I'll send another thing out tomorrow. But we'll be tying flies tomorrow, and or a fly, and we're gonna pick a winner every night. So I've got a prize box in the back room in the office that has all sorts of fun stuff. So I'm gonna go through here and we're gonna pick somebody that write down some people that commented and pick one out of a hat. You'll get a prize, and at the end of the thing, probably the person that was on every night, or we'll probably do something like that. We've got a big prize for them too. But thanks, Matt. I know Matt's a Pike guy. Steelhead and salmon tomorrow, Court. I thought no, it was either one or the other. I hope one was supposed to be Kings and Coho, and then one was supposed to be, but we'll see. Wow, you still have a foot and a half of ice up there, Dave. Dave, we have not had. I mean, for the most part, all winter we didn't have ice. It was such a warm winter. It was the third warmest winter we've ever had. That's crazy. You still have that much up out there. That's our water temp on the Joe was up to almost 60 degrees. Tyler, man, that makes me happy, buddy. That makes me smile. That's what it's about to me right there. I love to teach, and the fact that you can come up here and learn something and catch some steelhead and then go do it on your water down there, man, that's so cool. The best, I told Tyler this story, the best nonstop trout action I've ever had in my life was not when I guided in Montana. It wasn't on a river in Michigan. It was in Alabama. And that is the truth. Literally, I caught a fish every cast. It was unbelievable. Wow, down to 8 degrees tonight. It's cold here, Dave. We're expecting 26 tonight, which is for what we've had. That's really cold. Like I said, our water was up to 60 degrees. I was getting a little worried about the end of the steelhead run coming, but it's back down now, thank goodness. It looks like we should have some steelhead around even into May with these water temps. Andy, thanks, man. Adam, are pike in the lakes? Pike have already spawned in the lakes. Muskie are spawning right now, and they spawn after the pike do. So yeah, they're pike are probably done. I'm sure pike are done. Not probably, they're done. I'd be shocked if they're not, especially as warm as it's had. That we've gotten. But muskie are spawning. I actually saw some video over on Webster of muskie spawning yesterday. Yeah, yep. So here in a few weeks, it's time to go. I don't like hitting those things that are lethargic a little bit now, or they're super aggressive because they're spawning, and I don't want to mess with them. But here before too long, it's time to do it. Yeah, Adam, pike typically are spawning about the same time as steelhead to start. They go in the backwaters, the swamps, the kind of the backwaters of the rivers, the flooded areas, and they do their thing right after ice out. So yeah, normally February through mid-March. Thanks, Dave. Good having you, buddy. So Coho and Kings tomorrow, Court said. So tomorrow we will be doing. Might do 2 flies. I've got 2 written down. I want to show a sparrow, and then the other one is called a coho killer. It's one that I came up with a few years ago, and it has been a phenomenal coho pattern for us. So I'll probably do both of those tomorrow. Any other questions? Yeah, Sean, I remember you telling me you saw a bunch of guys down at 19. Yeah, pike are early spawners. They're some of the earliest spawners. Probably, pike and summer run steelhead probably around here, the 2 earliest spawners. Yeah, summer runs tend to get it done as soon as they can. Who's ready to do some pike fishing this summer? Some muskie fishing? I am. I can't wait. I cannot wait to get out and pike fish. I would like to go here real soon, see if I can get Lucas on the oars and me fishing. You want a Roboleski tomorrow? Oh, man, we got the Prestonian. Is there a Roboleskian? I don't know. Preston, you on there? Is there a Roboleskian? That might be a backwards fly. I don't know about that. Thanks, guys. I look forward to tomorrow, too. It's going to be awesome. I'll see you then. Muskie and Pike are done. Hey, if you have any questions that pop into your head, don't hesitate to shoot me a text or give me a call or shoot me an email or a message on Facebook or YouTube. But if you don't have any questions, we'll do some coho and kings tomorrow. Looking forward to it. The Giants. It's time to start lifting weights. Get ready for that king run next fall. All right, see you guys. Thanks so much. Have a great night. It was a blast. I hope you enjoyed it.